Hello, it's Sarah from Hardcover Hearts, and I'm here with my week of reading wrap-up. This is where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next week based on my mood. So I had some real outliers this week. So a horrible book, and then an amazing book. So let's get straight to it. Let's get the bad out of the way first, shall we? As loath as I am to admit it, Ms. Anita Brookner has let us down. And this is by far, I think, the worst book of the lot that we've read so far. This is number 11, A Closed Eye by Anita Brookner. Lovely cover. What's so crazy about this is I raved about this book, which is number 10, Brief Lives. Brief Lives was remarkable, absolutely adored it. And I think this was the best of what she provides. This was nowhere near what we can do. In this, she just really stumbled and got in her own way. This is the story of Harriet. And Harriet started off as a really kind of self-contained girl. Her parents are really immature. They had her very young, and the father came back from war a little simple, and the mother just had to kind of take everything on. She is married off, or kind of introduced to a man, and the man is her father's age, is actually someone her father knew. She ends up accepting his marriage proposal because the mother and father kind of said, well, you know, you need to get on with life, get out there, and really encouraged it. And he is just not a good match. You know, he's in his 50s, 60s, and she is just turning 20. And very, very isolated, very naive, doesn't know a lot. So, but she thinks he's kind and nice, and she, in typical Anita Brookner way, thinks that marriage equals security. And apparently that's everything that a Brookner woman wants in her life. So she marries him, and it's a very difficult marriage. Not difficult, it's boring. He's a bad lover. She doesn't know what she wants. She's naive, but she kind of does her quote unquote duty. In here, we also meet Tessa and two other girls that she was friends with and has been friends with for most of her life, most of her school days. And she still stays in touch with. And Tessa is the one she's closest to. And Tessa finds herself pregnant with a man that she's going to force to marry her. So they have a dinner with this man, and Anita. It definitely felt like Anita was, as usual, working through something with this book. Harriet, the character, sees him and is immediately attracted to him, like animalistic, immediate magnetism with this man, and is convinced herself that she needs to have an affair with him. And so Harriet is just a dislikable character. And allow me to say, not because she wants to have an affair, because she is wholly superficial. In this book, it's just outrageous, all the conversations about people's appearances and judging their worth based on their appearance. She ends up having a daughter, Imogen, with her husband, and gives Imogen anything she wants because Imogen deserves it because she's beautiful. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And she talks about how Imogen turns away at age 3 from her father because she sees how old and decrepit the father is and therefore doesn't love him, and is, kind of right to do so. It shows her astuteness and her will, and how she, that beautiful people don't have to deal with the same kinds of problems that normal people, and they don't have to suffer through ugly people and being around them. It never ended. So this entire book is her hand-wringing about wanting to have this affair, and then trying to befriend the little daughter of her friend Tessa and Jack as a means of, just kind of staying closer to them and trying to foist a relationship between her daughter and Lizzie, Tessa's daughter. It was unendingly neurotic, unendingly whiny. Again, no self-worth at all in this at all. And the superficiality was too much. It was repetitive, It was surface. If you're going to pick up a Brookner, stay away from this one. Brief Lives. Do that one. So bummer on that. Then continuing my NetGalley busting ways, I've made a mistake with NetGalley. I have. I was on a roll and I had 59% completion rate. I was doing great, but then I got enticed by some new releases and now I have added more to the pile. So therefore my ratio has gone down. I think this is always going to be a battle I'm going to fight. So there you go. But this is a new release. This is Leonora in the Morning Light by Michaela Carter. Now, Leonora Carrington is everywhere right now. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but a new book just came out of her drawings and her designs for a tarot deck, which is incredibly interesting. This book, again, a NetGalley book I was given the arc to, but it's just been released, is the fictional biography of her life as a young artist. So we meet her as a woman who's already on her own, living in London and working as a young artist. And she meets Max Ernst and immediately falls in love with him and starts a torrid affair. Her father is incredibly wealthy, just incredibly wealthy and powerful. And so this is really a bad match because her father's never going to go for this. She has a bohemian spirit and has always had. So there's a natural pairing with her and Max Ernst. And he introduces her to the Surrealist movement. And I have to say that a lot of what I already learned in this book, I ended up having to go out and buy the book because I reference it so much. And I think it's so remarkable. It's Ninth Street Women, Lee Krasner, Elaine de Kooning, Grace Hardigan, Joan Mitchell, and Helen Frankenthaler, 5 painters in the movement that changed modern art by Mary Gabriel. It's a phenomenal book. I cannot recommend it more highly if you're interested in women artists, that this time period in American history or this art movement. But there's a lot of talk in this book about the Surrealists and how misogynist they were, and how the flight, a lot of them, Peggy Guggenheim paid for them to flee Europe because she recognized that what was happening with the Nazi takeover was going to impact the arts. And so she, being a very, very wealthy woman, was able to get a lot of people out. And so it was interesting to be able to tie that moment in what this story with Leonora in the Morning Light and this book, because it definitely had some crossing. So we learn about Max. There's rotating chapters between Leonora, Max, and then later on Peggy Guggenheim. I think that there was a lot of interesting things here. It's if you're curious about this time where the artists were fleeing Nazi persecution and trying to get out of Europe, and how that happened. If you're curious about the Surrealist movement and Max Ernst, this is great. I feel like I didn't get enough about Leonora. I felt like we are hitched her wagon to Max's story, and her story becomes so much richer when she actually flees and moves to Mexico. And I would love for that story to come out. So I'm hoping someday it does. But unfortunately, that was not the scope of this book. Still a good book, especially if you like fictionalized biographies, which I do. So then let's talk about a remarkable book, absolutely remarkable. I mentioned reading the first of this duology last week and teed up that I was going to be reading this. This is for the 1936 Club, which I have to thank them for even putting this on my radar because I don't know how I missed this. These Virago Modern Classics with the green spine are books that just are not well known in the United States. These authors are not well known, and it is to our discredit. This book was amazing. This is Weather in the Streets by Rosamond Lehmann, and this is the second in the book, in the, as I mentioned, duology. So in here, in the last book, Invitation to the Waltz, we have Olivia, who's waking up on her birthday, who's preparing to go to a ball at a dance. And she's awkward and young, but she's very interesting. And we get a lot in her mind and her perspective on things. And all of the challenges of being out in the world and trying to make a good impression and all the social niceties, how fraught being at a ball like this is. It's really focused on this, all the people that she meets there, all the different personalities. But here we jump 10 years forward, and we have her waking up at her friend's house. It turns out that she married one of those men from the previous book, and it was a failed marriage. It was brief. It was absolutely not the right thing. She recognized her error, and in 1936, when this was published, she leaves him. I know, right? So already, quite interesting. You should take a page out of her book. Anita Brookner. This book was written in 1991. Anita. So 1936. So we have Olivia waking up at her friend's house. She's staying with her friend. Her friend is actually, I think, a cousin. And her cousin is independently wealthy and just kind of like social butterfly, and wakes up late and then gets ready and goes out and does things with people and just lives this bon vivant life. She gets a call from her mother that her father is very sick and he has pneumonia. So she is, in essence, called home. And she's very nervous because she knows that her mother is one of those staunch women that isn't easily ruffled. And so the fact that she's actually being called home means that it's really serious. So she jumps on a train. And while she's sitting there at this train, a gentleman comes on and sits across from her with his little dog. And it's Rollo. Rollo is one of the men that she had the most interesting conversation with and the most sparks from the last book. He is a member of the peerage. He's very wealthy. The energy and the sexual magnetism of these two characters in those moments, the witty repartee and the flirting was phenomenal. I sunk into this book in chapter 1 and just thought, oh, finally. It was such a wonderful expression of what's going on in her mind and the second guessing. And you hear what she said, you see what she says, but you also see what she's thinking. She has this great way of writing that way. And so having these two different levels of what's happening really allows you to get a sense of her inner turmoil as she's going through these. This ends up being the story of their affair. He is married. Obviously, she is separated. And his wife is really poorly. She had a miscarriage and she's in deep, deep, deep depression and therefore known as frail. Doesn't get out of bed, doesn't do anything. And they have no sex life, no engagement at all, but he won't leave her because it's, not honorable. But they have this sparkling affair. And this just had everything. And I was shocked at how absolutely modern some of the conversations were, but in such a natural way. It was not shocking. It was not put in there for titillating effect. I felt like I could see it. I felt like it was real. So we have adultery, we have sex, we have homosexuality, and there's even abortion talked about in this book in very realistic terms. I again cannot say something more highly. I'm amazed at this book. And Roz from Scaladandaling about the books, you said that this was amazing and one of your favorite writers. And I want to know, where do I go next? Please let me know. Remarkable. And again, I get really irritated. I'm always in used bookstores. Used bookstores are my haven. And I don't come across these books. I don't come across Virago Modern Classics or these authors. which is very frustrating. So I hope that more people, specifically Americans, will look for them and try to seek them out. Okay, and then for Aussie April, I read the best kind of historical fiction I think there is. Geraldine Brooks's Year of Wonders. So again, this was for Aussie April, even though this was set in 1666, one of my favorite years of history because so much happened then, outside in a little village outside of London. Geraldine Brooks is an Australian author. This book just, as I said, it's the best kind of historical fiction to me because it's well researched. And I think for me, when historical fiction gets it right, it's because it creates a world building, almost like you have to do in sci-fi, where you have to establish the norms. Because if we assume, we may assume too modern norms. And so there are things that have to kind of be broken down, and there's a whole, like I said, the whole rules and taboos and understanding of what life is like that I think is required in really good historical fiction, at least in my opinion. And she just sets this immersive tale. We have Anna Frith, who is 18 years old. She already has children. Her husband has already died, so she's a widow. And she works as a housekeeper for the local pastor. And she is really in dire need of money because she has a brand new child. So she can't do some of the things that she used to do because of needing to tend to the child so often. So a gentleman appears and is sent to her home as a potential lodger. He is a dressmaker, and he comes in and stays with her. He also brings not just beautiful gowns that he designs because he's a dressmaker, but also the first bits of the bubonic plague into this little village. And to disastrous, as you can imagine, consequences. This is so much about the best of people and the worst of people, and how a village reacts to the encroachment of things that they don't understand, which I think a lot of us probably would relate to given the year that we've just lived through. I thought it was going to be more than I wanted to deal with, but the world building was so good that I felt really taken out of our world into a different one. And I think that that Anna was just such a remarkable character, and I was so glad we were taken through with her vantage point as our focus, because she was just absolutely remarkable. And I loved the aspects of herbology and early medicine and the ideas of how they started to piece together what was actually happening and the different ways they started figuring it out. And this is all based on a real village that was outside London. So she did her research. This was just remarkable. And if you like historical fiction, you can't go wrong. This is the Year of Wonders. So as you can see, that was a really phenomenal reading week. Save the Anita Brookner. Let's get into what I'm currently reading. Still slowly going through Proust. This is Marcel Proust in Search of Lost Time, Volume 3, The Guermantes Way. I try to read about 10 pages whenever I pick it up, and I'm finding that I'm interested in picking it up, and it's a really nice palate cleanser. I don't pick it up every day, but I'm making slow and steady progress, which is what you always hope for, right? Then I'm also continuing on with my buddy read with Elizabeth, The Bookish North of The Voyage Out by Virginia Woolf. We are doing this project to read all of her fiction, and more to come on this. It's absolutely remarkable. And, reading Woolf with a buddy reader is fantastic. I also have 2 NetGalleys that I'm knocking out. These are both recent new things. I have Rachel Kushner's new series of essays called The Hard Crowd. And I'm just loving it because she opens up with a motorcycle story of her and one of her first motorcycle adventures. And she's from San Francisco, so she mentions a lot of landmarks that I know. And my first vehicle I ever owned was a motorcycle. So a lot of the things that she talks about her accidents, about working on her bike, about some of the challenges in riding, just reminds me of really long trips that I've taken. And so it's really good. And so the first essay was a memoir about her taking a trip to Baja, California on a motorcycle to join a race. And then the second one is about her at a Palestinian camp and what she's learning about herself, what she's learning about the camp, and how she's breaking some of her assumptions going in, which I find really interesting. So, so far, so good. Then I'm also reading Murder Most Fair, and this is the next, I think it's number 4 in the Anna Lee Hoover series. The Verity Kent is the character. And this is like a spy murder mystery series. And I just like Verity Kent as a character. We have them kind of coming off of her and her husband, off their last big caper, and they're decompressing in the country, and her aunt, who is German, arrives and has been given access to the UK. This is after World War I, immediately after World War I. And so it's very unusual that her aunt from Germany was allowed in. And so she's realizing that something has happened. Her aunt was really kind of pushed out of in danger because she was outed as helping the British during the war. She did something for Verity that it was supposed to be one mission that ended up being 2, but nobody knows what the second mission was. So there's the mystery right there. So great. It's always such a smart character. I really enjoy this series. So that's going well. And then let's talk about what I'm about to read. About to read the next in my In Real Life Book Club project, where we're reading the Booker shortlist. And this is Bart Sugar by Avni Doshi. I just love this cover, the colors, the design, everything. And I know this is about a difficult relationship between a mother and daughter. So excited to leave the women warrior stories of the last 2, which was This Mournable Body and The Shadow King, which is the 2 books that we just finished, and move on to a different topic. And then, so book spin number 2 is coming up, and I have not finished book spin number 1. Told you I'm really bad at making TBRs. So maybe I'll try to get this done this week before book spin 2 comes along. So that's it. That's all I have. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are still staying safe. I have been slowly getting out into the world, and on Instagram I posted my first visit back to Mo's Books, which is one of the bookstores that I revere. It's 4 stories of books, and their used book section is outstanding, and apparently they saved some gems for me. And so if you're interested in that, check out my Instagram account for that. And then I did write a story or a kind of blog post about buddy reading and how I approach buddy reading. And so if you don't know a lot about buddy reading, or if you're curious about it, or if you think that you want to buddy read with me, maybe read that and see if I'm your style of buddy reader, because I kind of go into the compatibility question there. So that's it for me for now. Thank you so much for watching. And as I have continued to say, and I will continue until the pandemic is over globally, because we are kind of on Earth together, and everything that's happening in India right now with the numbers is a complete horror, and can happen anywhere with variants busting out. So please maintain safe social distance, wear your mask. If you're not vaccinated, wear 2, wash your hands, and don't touch your face. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye.